People used to worry because before a raid, they would put explosives in front of people's doors and detonate them. They threatened everyone, saying, "If you leave the house, we will shoot you." This affected everyone, and even if we went to the commander to complain, he would say, "No one can come after me."
Well, let's get more on this now with Omar Samad. He's a non-resident senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's South Asia Centre. He's also Afghanistan's former ambassador to France. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the program, Ambassador. Is it conceivable that in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan that criminals and indeed those guilty of war crimes could have boarded those US evacuation flights?
Well, if you look at the Afghanistan history, going back for 44 years to the time when the communists took over, the Soviets came in, the fighting against the Mujahideen fighting the government, then the Taliban coming, then the US and NATO, you realize that this country has seen it all, meaning that this country has suffered heavily. The population, both urban and rural, as your report mentioned, and focus on one area and that justice has not been rendered. And the one thing that is missing in Afghanistan, and I hope one day we can, and the government, whoever eventually the legitimate and recognized government will be, will have to make sure that the Afghan people who demand accountability will be served justice, and that those who have committed crimes, those who have abused human rights, whether in cities or villages, that they will be brought to justice and that they will have to answer.
So what do you believe should happen to those US-trained Afghan personnel who are now living in the United States and indeed in other countries? Should they be held accountable?
So we do know that over the last 20 years, especially the last 10 or less, there were some units that were trained for counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. We do also have reports in the media on many occasions, including Western media, about violations that have taken place. Violations that have taken place by all sides, and the Afghan civilians have been victims of war and conflict that obviously Afghanistan suffered through for the past few years. I do not know for a fact which units have been taken to the United States. The United States has to come through, has to give information about this. The United States needs to tell us who has been evacuated and what kind of record these people may have. And at some point, if obviously the political situation warrants it, and there's enough attention given to this matter, this issue needs to be brought to the surface and realize that we need to differentiate between those who have committed crimes versus those who are innocent.
And 1 year on, governments and aid organizations are still struggling with how they can work with Afghanistan's Taliban rulers. How should the international community deal with them?
Well, it's very interesting that today the Security Council of the United Nations had a special meeting on Afghanistan. Most countries were in favor of calibrated engagement, as some called it, meaning that there's a need to talk to the Taliban about pressing issues that have to do with the humanitarian situation and the collapsing economy of Afghanistan. There are 19 million people in that country who are food insecure. Half the population needs help. 25 million people are under the line of poverty. 6 million are facing famine, including 1 million children who may die over the next year. So this is pretty dire, and this has to be addressed. And in order to do so, you have to work with all sides, whether you like them or not, in order to make sure that we find solutions and that we can reach the people who need it the most.
Okay, Ambassador Omar Samad, we'll have to leave it there, but we really appreciate your analysis. Thanks very much for joining us.